All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. You know him. He's the slot man himself, TrillBroDude. You know Ball. The merch is right there. We'll put a link in the description. You know him on youtube.com/YouKnowBall and all that good stuff. But Trill, I'm just going to call you Trill. How are you, sir?
Doing well. We just did get some slop that dropped about 20 minutes ago, which made me personally sad because of the implications of the Bradley Beal stuff. But otherwise been doing well. Been doing a lot of draft research, been doing some free agency stuff, streams and all that, staying busy. So it's been fun. It's the off season's almost always the most fun and busy time of the year for us. So it's been good.
There you go. Here on the Hawks front, we just have, it's just going to be a lot of, who's that guy on the Hawks bench? It's just, Udo's going to be on the bench, Mike Bray's going to be on the bench, Igor is going to be on the bench. A lot of who's who, where it's wait, why do I know this person? Was this a player? Was this a coach? Everyone from, the, just all over the map on NBA Twitter and everywhere. The Hawks bench is just going to be pretty wild next year.
Yeah, I mean, I know Igor from, the famous Suns passing on Luka Doncic when he was literally his coach at one point. So
yeah, I don't know anything about Luka Doncic. If the Hawks were in a position to just take Luka Doncic and just keep him and build around him, I would have loved a situation like that.
I can't. It seems impossible to imagine.
No, I mean, many of us have wondered what the Hawks would do in such a situation, but unfortunately, we'll never know.
Well, hey, get your trade package ready. We might be here in a year talking about that. So,
I mean, we'll see. There's all kinds of time for slop and future slop here, TBD. So, I want to start this question. Do you want, as a Sixers fan, Sixers connoisseur, do you want James Harden back next year?
No. Nope.
Okay.
I'm done. I mean, I've seen what I need to see. Here's the thing with James Harden. First off, I don't want to blame James Harden for why they lost the playoff series. I know that's a popular thing to do. Realistically, we were only in those last two games because Harden was incredible in game one and incredible again in game four. And if he did not have those performances, the Sixers probably would have lost that series in 5 games. So I can't really put the blame on him. I ultimately think that it came down to Joel Embiid not really taking over at the end of game 6 and in game 7 when he had the opportunity to. Your best players need to step up, and if they don't, then you're probably going to lose, as we just saw in the NBA Finals when Nikola Jokic, carried the team to a title, despite having, good performances from Jamal Murray and role players, but you kind of need everything to be clicking at the right time in order to make it all work. And, I mean, I don't blame Harden for the reason. How much more evidence do we need? It's been a decade, dude. Every elimination game, every big game, it's basically a no-show outside of those hot shooting games that he had in game 1 and game 4 against Boston, a team that showed that they had some defensive issues this year. I don't think, I can't sit here and act like I didn't see. I saw the Sixers pushing them to 7. I thought the Celtics were clearly the better team. I thought they were going to win in 5 or 6. The fact that the Sixers even got as far as they did was encouraging, but I'm done. What do we Joel Embiid has his playoff faults. James Harden has his playoff faults. I think that Joel has enough time left, hopefully, to rewrite whatever his legacy is, whatever his history will show. I don't see it with James Harden. When was the last time James Harden, before this round, when, by the way, he was the best player on the court for 2 games, and he was also the worst player on the court in 3 other games. And then he had 1 game where he was fine. Can we just get to the point where James Harden is passable in big games? Because that feels like it would make a big difference. But I'm done trying. And I know it's not the smart thing to do with the quote unquote asset to let a guy walk out the door for nothing. But he's not going to get any better. He's going to turn 34 years old next year. He's 33. I don't see the upside in bringing back James Harden in the same way that I think if you were to put Tyrese Maxey on the ball and potentially turn Tobias Harris into either different, which they're probably going to do anyway, turn Tobias's contract into other role players, or turning him into a Bradley Beal or someone who is now available, or turn it into someone that gives you the opportunity to at least have the upside of not being the worst player on the court in big games is feels like a massive advantage to me. And I don't understand how you can talk yourself back into the Sixers with Joel Embiid and James Harden as the two best players.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm glad you brought up Maxey because I think that's just going to be the biggest summer discussion point for a lot of Sixers fans is like, okay, if you lose James Harden for nothing and he's gone, he's back to Houston, whatever. Like, I think there's probably two schools of Maxey camps, right? Like, you're more plugged in on this front than I am. Like, is there the front that's like, he's a star in waiting, now he can be on the ball, he can be in the James Harden role where we can actually see what he looks like with a crazy high usage and what it looks like in the pick and pop game with him and Embiid being the main feature of the offense. Like, what can Nick Nurse get out of Maxey in like a Fred VanVleet type thing where he's playing 40 minutes a night and playing a bunch on ball? Like, is there untapped all-star potential with Maxey? And then there's the other side where it's like, that's a big gamble to just let Harden walk and then just be like, all right, Maxey, your turn. Time to go be a superstar.
Is it a big gamble?
That's what I'm asking. Like, I don't know.
What's the upside? Losing in the second round again? This team is never making the conference finals or the finals. Like we know that is unless they turn Tobias Harris into fucking Paul George without getting rid of Maxey. Like, there's no route that this team has to making it past the second. Like, this was the year. They had it. They were up at home game 6, and the Stars showed who they are in the biggest moment again. Like, the upside doesn't exist is my thing. It's like the upside is the second round. Like, I think that the Eastern Conference was way weaker this year in the playoffs. It proved to be way weaker than we had ever anticipated. The 8 seed got to the finals. The one seed lost in the first round. The 2 seed, who everyone thought was the favorites in the Celtics, were completely vulnerable and lost to that same Heat team, should have lost to the Sixers. Next year, now you're looking at a situation where the Heat are probably going to get Bradley Beal. They'll be better.
Do you think he doesn't feel like a Heat guy to me?
What's that?
I don't think Beal feels like a Heat guy to me.
I disagree. He went to school in Florida. I'm telling you, what's today's date? June 14th.
Yeah.
January 28th next year, we will have an article written by Brian Windhorst or something that's like how Bradley Beal needed Heat culture to Heat culture to recapture his All-NBA prowess or whatever. Like, put it in fucking money right now. I called it a few days ago that the Heat were going to be on Beal. Shams just said it. And now Windhorst is saying you could basically get Bradley Beal for nothing because they just want to get off the contract. You're going to get a fringe all-star, potential all-NBA player with Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. You're probably just going to have to give up Kyle Lowry's expiring contract and your first-round pick. Like,
that's not enough.
Who's trading for Bradley Beal? He has. Well,
here's the thing. He can be. There's one juggernaut that, and I've been at the top of the mountain, with screaming this particular trade. It makes no sense to just not trade for Bradley Beal if you're Portland. Like, just give Shaedon Sharpe the number 3 pick. And
they're not doing that.
Why? Like, just ride it out with Lillard and Beal. Be fun for the last remainder portion of Lillard's prime. You're not going to get equal value for moving on from Lillard this summer. Like, just ride it out. Just be awesome and super fun for the last couple years.
There's 3 reasons why this won't happen. I'm telling you right now.
Okay.
The main one is that they're going to view it in the same way that they viewed Bradley Beal. They viewed Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum.
But I think it's an upgrade, right? Do you think Beal is better than what McCollum is? Best version of Beal?
I think the best version of Beal, yes. I don't think he's going to be that in Portland. I think he could be that in Miami. I don't think he could be that in Portland. If he goes to Portland, it's basically going to be a stronger, like a physically stronger, worse shooting version of what you got with CJ McCollum. Because people love to act like Bradley Beal's like a 50% 3-point shooter. He's not really the 3-point shooter he was early in his career. Some of that is the fact that he's moved on the ball. Another part of it is that he's gotten stronger so he can be a better driver, and that can mess with guys' touch a little bit. But like CJ, to me, this version of Bradley Beal, as it currently exists, if you put him on the Portland Trailblazers, would be like a slightly better version maybe than what we got from CJ McCollum a few years ago. So that's the number one reason. Number two is that Dame and him are both on Supermax contracts, and Portland is just not going to pay $100 million for two guards. They're just not going to do it.
Especially when an ownership situation being what it is. And,
exactly. Like they're already a cheap, like Miami's might be willing to spend. And like Bam's friends with him. They are paying Jimmy a ton, but this is their window, and they were just in the finals for the second time in what, 4 years, 3 years? Like I look at it like from Miami's situation, it like makes a lot of sense to push in the chips. You can get him for very little. Beal has a no trade clause.
Yeah.
If he says trade me to Miami, if he says trade me to Boston, if he says trade me to Philly, those teams have no reason to give up a ton of stuff because they're like, he wants to come here. We're paying him one of the 5 biggest contracts in NBA history to come here and potentially not even make the All-Star team. Like the asset that his contract was a year and a half ago is not what it is today. And now it's like, I think he has negative trade value, if anything. Like, I think it's going to be, I think the return is literally going to be like Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson in the 18th pick, maybe.
Wow. There are some other ones too. Like if you're Memphis, I think you think about it with where Ja is, and you're like, hey, Desmond Bane, like it's a good piece. Like that's a nice value. Like some picks and Bane. Like if you built a package around Desmond Bane, I wonder if you're able to get in there because then you're like, hey, let's just go.
We're going to do it either.
Yeah.
It's just the small market thing. Like, one, Beal has to put him on their list, and then more importantly to me, like, look at how Milwaukee's built. Look at how Denver's built. Look at how these teams that win titles that are in small markets build. They build through the draft, and then they might take a risk on a third star. Like, maybe you could view it as like the Drew Holiday trade a few years ago.
Yeah.
But they traded when they traded for Drew Holiday, they traded Eric Bledsoe, who was like done. Like he was like they were done with him. And then just the draft picks and contracts to make it work. Whereas like I'll be honest, I'd rather just straight up have Desmond Bane than Bradley Beal if I'm the Grizzlies. Like I think Bane might not reach the level of creator that Beal is, but as a shoot, like what do you need with Ja Morant? You need an elite shooter. And like JJJ and Bane are shooting wise, and like he still has 1 year left on his rookie deal. I don't think he's going to get a full max on the next deal. And this new CBA is going to make it so that it's so hard if you have multiple max contracts, which is why the Sixers aren't really interested, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, because this new CBA is going to make it so that basically like you can't have mid-level exceptions, you can't trade future picks. You're going to get so screwed if you do all these things. You have no flexibility. So that's why a team like Miami is the only team, and maybe Boston are the only teams that make sense, because this is, and to a lesser extent, I guess the Sixers, but like this is their window. Next year is their window. The year after that is their window. They don't have to worry about all that stuff in the future. Whereas a team like Memphis is like, well, we don't even know if John Morant's going to play the first 50 games of next year.
Yeah. I don't think Jimmy will like playing with Beal. I don't think he fits. I don't think he fits with what you just saw with Miami this past year in the run, and like just I don't think that's a marriage that works. Like Jimmy, there was a reason in Minnesota practice that man was like, give me all the G Leaguers and I'm going to go beat Cat and company. Like the way he's wired, and I understand like he ran out of gas, and who knows, maybe it was the ankle getting turned and that early on in the postseason and that kind of changing things. But like when you watch them, and like obviously Tyler Hero not being a factor helped them for the majority of this postseason, not having to insert Hero and his issues defensively in those lineups. Like I wonder if those two actually align. It's like one of those things with Trey. Like I just saw it for a full year with Trey and DeJounte, where I cautioned Hawks fans, where I was like, no, it's cool that Trey is all in on DeJounte now. It's July. Like I would hope that he would be the case. Like it sounds great in theory. Like I'm bringing in another all-star. Like this is going to be fun. I'm ready to move off ball. I'm ready to like get back to the Eastern Conference Finals where I was 2 years ago. The problem with that is eventually you have to play basketball with one another, and it's not 2K, and you have to actually see what that's like. And Trey did not do anything off the ball. Like Trey did not evolve. It did not really work. It was a lot of staggering, which is what it should be. Like DeJounte and Trey should stagger most of the time. But like it wasn't a clean fit, and it wasn't something where you're like, oh, this marriage is going to work long term. And then you see like DeJounte can leave for nothing next year. So the Hawks gave up just a cornucopia of assets and picks to bring him in, and you're like, do you really sell low? Like, there's a reason he's now popped up as like they might trade him this summer, because like you said, with the new CBA and everything, like, are you sure you really want to be tied down to Trey and DeJounte as your like guys, and then no mid-level and everything else, and just believing that is enough to make it all work? I just look at it in terms of a basketball fit, where I'm like, I don't know if those two guys might be friends. I just don't know if Jimmy will love playing with Beal and going to war with Beal in a playoff format. I have my doubts.
We haven't seen Beal in a big game in like 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to say it's easy to say in theory, oh yeah, he could get back to be the shooter that he was as a young player. He could get back to being the level of defender he was as a young player when the games actually mattered, before he became like the on-ball guy. But like, what team gets away with this all the time?
Yeah.
Every time one of these guys goes there, they're the best versions of themselves. We saw Kevin Love playing like real minutes in the NBA Finals. Kyle Lowry was probably the one example where it actually didn't work out in the way that people had anticipated it. But Lowry's like 37 years old. Like, even PJ Tucker at 36 was like maximized there. Like, so many guys go there and they become the best versions of themselves because they basically they know the guys to target. They sit down with them before and they say, look, like, you got to buy in. Like, you got to buy in. You're going to be like, it's just like, I watch Gabe Vincent, what he's doing right now, and I watch Tyler Hero and players who are just like much less talented than Bradley Beal. And I'm like, put Bradley Beal, or like people were talking about Damian Lillard in that system too. Like, put either of those guys in there, and it's like, best of luck to the rest of the league. Like, maybe it does come down to like the fit isn't quite clean enough if Beal can't get back to being the level of shooter that he was, because they already their two best players don't shoot threes. Like, Jimmy
Lillard's a much better fit, I think, there. And
Lillard's
I think
a fantastic fit pretty much wherever he goes, I feel like. But like, I mean, he's
probably not Atlanta. I'm good on that. Dude.
Sure, but he's one of the 12 best players in the NBA. So you change your team to build around Dame in the way the 99% of the league is not worth changing your team for. Damian Lillard's one of the 12 best players in the league, so you're willing to work with that. I think that, like, I just know we're going to be sitting here in 6 months being like, oh, the Heat are in second place in the East, and Beal is averaging an efficient 28 a game, and they have a top 10 offense again, even though, like, despite the fact that, like, they just were one of the worst offenses for the league, except for the 7 games they hit 50% of their threes in the playoffs. Like,
so what do you think Morey does? Because I just don't see him sitting on his hands. Like, we're nearing, and look, I don't want to scare you or sound the alarm here when it comes to Embiid.
It's over, dude. I'm done, dude. I genuinely just think it's done. It's over.
What's over?
This window is done.
So you think the window's over?
This last year was their opportunity, and they blew it.
Man. So what do you do if, like, you're a GM right now? What do you do if you're in Morey's shoes this summer?
You trade Tobias Harris for 2 bigger contracts that might be a little bit longer to your Atlanta Hawks, maybe if they want to get off Collins and Hunter, and you throw in DeAnthony Melton and maybe a future protected first or something, and then hope that works, because those guys might just need a new change of scenery, like we see every year with these guys like Aaron Gordon and Wiggins and whatever. Like, that's your chance. And you hope that Joel Embiid is healthy and can be a better playmaker in the playoffs. Like, those are your 2 chances. And, like, I don't know. You can change the role players. You can change the coach. You can change whatever. I just think that a James Harden, Joel Embiid team in the playoffs is going to have a conference final ceiling. And unless Joel figures out his playoff stuff next year, it's done. Like, it's like I've sat here and speculated for 4 years on how it could be different, and every year it's the same. No matter who the role players are, no matter who the coach is, no matter who the second star is, no matter what, like, it all comes down to Joel just carrying the team, and he's just proven that he can't really do that.
So let's say that they sign Fred VanVleet. They let Harden walk.
Sure.
They give Maxey an elevated role. Trade Tobias for picks and assets and role players. and then it's just all throughout Joel. He stays healthy, high usage, probably a lot of minutes with Nick Nurse. Like, does that have a higher ceiling next year?
It's probably about the same. Once again, I think it's going to come down to Joel, but like, I like the idea of putting players, because if you're going to go all in on the Joel Embiid experience, which the Sixers are very obviously going to do in this next year, I would rather just get off-ball guys like Maxey, Beal, Van Fleet than go with James Harden, who needs the ball 50 times a game, 100 times a game, and being like, oh no, these two can work together when, like, yes, in the regular season when the pick and roll's working, the Celtics figured that out by game 4 and the offense was horrible. Like the Nets stagnated their offense in games 2 and 3 in that series. The Nets were not a playoff team. If they played a whole season, they would have won 30 games. And they stagnated their offense. Like, it's like crazy to me to continue to do the same thing over and over and hope for different results. And like, I personally think that if you're going to win with Joel, I would rather go that route. The thing is you probably have to dump Tobias for virtually no contracts. So you'd have to find a team that has like so for example, like if they were just like, they went to the Spurs. I'm just making up an example off the top of my head. If they went to the Spurs and they were like, send us Doug McDermott so we can have a shooter off the bench, and then you take Doug McDermott's $12 million, Tobias is like $40 million goes out the door. You can have a road to cap space to sign Fred VanVleet and maybe one other player. And then from there, it's like, okay, so now you have like Fred VanVleet, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen McDaniels, who, you know, was up and down for the team last year, but I think he could be like a solid wing. PJ Tucker, Embiid, Melton, whatever. Like, it's still not like championship level, but like at least you're trying something different. You're trying more athletic guys who are going to put up a ton of threes like Fred VanVleet and hopefully Tyrese Maxey, like guys that are just going to be able to function with the ball, without the ball. And people are mad at Doc Rivers right now for going on Bill Simmons' podcast and literally just spitting facts about James Harden. And being, he
was like, also awesome. That was one of the best podcasts. Like, Doc is incredible on podcasts. He should do
media full time. Yeah. He's really good at it. Like, and we always joke when he was Sixers coach that he was a politician, and that like he works the media because he could be a media member.
But I don't even think he's like politician like, because he's it doesn't feel fake, and it feels genuine.
When he's the coach, it does, because he backs up his guys, and he's like, whatever. When he is fired, he just lets it go. Like, he's just like, whatever, I'll let it fly. But I mean, look, I'm not saying that it's and he said it on here, like, Joel, it all comes down to Joel getting to the point where he makes his teammates better. And like, he has not really done that at the highest levels. Like, in the regular season, he has times, and at the highest levels, James Harden doesn't commit to playing off the ball. He has defensive struggles, and those things are things that, and he doesn't want to do the ball movement thing, which has been a big part of Nick Nurse's offenses in Toronto. And like, this comes down to getting a guy who's never bought into anything but what he's really good at, until this past year when he kind of slightly sacrificed his role for whatever, and he was great at it in the regular season, but once again fell apart in the biggest moments. And like, I just think that like trying the same thing over and over and hoping for different results is just going to like drive us to all to insanity.
It's also interesting too that like, I think what is his name, Reno Hines, who's like apparently Pascal Siakam's best friend. I wonder what that means, like, because, you know, Slop City over here, does that mean like, it just, I mean, Nick Nurse obviously moving over helps things, but like, he's gonna have some guys. I just don't think there's any way that Nick Nurse does not bring one of Fred VanVleet or Pascal Siakam
or OG Anunoby
or OG, like, so one of those three is ending up in Philadelphia.
That would be like if they brought back Harden and they were able to swing a deal for like Maxey going out with VanVleet and OG coming back, and building a deal around Maxey and Tobias like that.
I mean, that's pretty fun though, right? Like, it's still Harden and Embiid, but
it would be a very, don't get me wrong, it would be a very good team.
Yeah.
From everything I've heard, they do not want to trade Tyrese Maxey, and I'm glad they don't, because I just think that like you can't blow up your team every single year. Like, you can remove one guy, two guys. You can't just change the entire team over the course of an offseason. Like, I would be fine with letting Harden walk and trying to keep the remaining core pieces and maybe bringing in one or two more guys. But like, Joel has had 7 different like second guys, third guys, fourth guy. Like it's every year we blow up the roster and we turn it over until this past year, really. That's the one argument you would have for keeping everything together. But like from everything I've heard, Van Fleet and Nurse have an amazing relationship and like really respect each other. And I think that there have even been Toronto reporters that have suggested like he's going to be interested in joining the Sixers. Like, which if Harden's coming back, then like I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean that like, because Maxey is not, if Van Fleet's interested and they're interested in Van Fleet, Maxey could be moved in a Tobias deal for like someone that I brought up earlier, like a Paul George or something like that. Like that's where it gets to the point where it's like, do you entertain those things? Do you make this one last push and hope that it is, you know, the right move that you're making, which I still think they're going to keep Maxey, but like those are the kind of opportunities that they'll probably be looking at this offseason. Everything I've ever heard about Nurse and Siakam is that they do not like each other and that they butted heads 3 or 4 times. When Adrian Griffin got the job for the Milwaukee Bucks this offseason, every Raptors player like congratulated him, and none of them congratulated Nick Nurse except for Fred VanVleet in that interview when he said, like, "Oh, I'm happy for him, whatever." No, like they all posted on social media about how great it was Adrian Griffin got a job. None of them posted about Nick Nurse. So that kind of tells you a little bit about his relationship outside of Fred VanVleet. And I think the Fred VanVleet thing is more that like he helped develop Fred and like they had a good working relationship going back to his days when he was an assistant in Toronto. So I think he respects Nick in that regard in a way that the other players might not have really seen eye to eye with him. Which
is kind of interesting because he made Fred VanVleet a lot of money. He probably made OG Anunoby a lot of money, Pascal Siakam a lot of money. It's kind of interesting. And
like Nurse has this reputation for not being like the easiest guy to get along with. Yeah. And like Sixers fans hated a lot of the stuff that Doc does, but like everything I hear that Raptors fans complain about Nurse is the same thing that we complained about Doc. Like he loves his guys too much. He plays them, but like at the end of the day, when you're trying to build a relationship like he did with Fred VanVleet, like you got to trust your guys. And like Doc said it on that interview with Bill Simmons. He's like, what am I supposed to do when James Harden and Joel Embiid are playing like shit in a big game? like what am I going to do? Just be like, oh no, let's throw the ball to Tobias Harris. Like I'm going down with the ship with my guys. Most coaches are like that. And like when the superstar plays great, like Jimmy Butler did against the Bucks or Giannis did against the Suns in the finals or Jokic did throughout this whole playoff run, the coaches look like geniuses.
It always cracks me up too. Like last year, was it last year or 2 years ago with the Paul Reed backup center minutes where Sixers fans were so annoyed at like what? Yeah, but it was like, but I was like, if Embiid's hurt, it doesn't matter. Like if Embiid can't, totally that was the whole thing where it was just so far. I'm like, it really doesn't matter if Embiid's not healthy. Like it just none of this matters.
DeAndre Jordan go on the court and Paul Millsap, and we were like, these are the worst players in the NBA. Why are they playing? And then Paul Reed.
That's NBA champion DeAndre Jordan to you, sir.
What's that?
That's NBA champion DeAndre Jordan to you,
That's
sir.
True. That's true. Yeah, congratulations. I mean, by all counts, a very good guy from what I've heard. Yeah. But like, ultimately, what this comes down to is like we were right about Paul Reed and we were right about Charles Bassey and Isaiah Joe, who they cut for nothing because Doc would never play them, and they're both rotation players on other teams now. Yeah. Like, that was the one thing about Doc that drove us insane is that it wasn't that he didn't play young players; it's that it's December and you're not giving the opportunity to experiment ever. Yeah. Ever. Not a single time will we see Paul Reed play with Joel Embiid or be the backup or Isaiah Joe only played when guys had COVID. And like
this is why vets love Doc though. It's like they knew that Doc was not going to in December be like, all right, and it's time to play Isaiah Joe. You need to sit down, Wesley Johnson. Right. Like it's time.
But in the new NBA, like there's so many games. Look at what the Heat just did. Yeah, the Heat rested their guys and they were injured all year and all this stuff, and then they're fresh legs for the playoffs. Like, why aren't you doing that in the middle of December and January when it's the dregs of the season? And like, who knows? Maybe you'll find a Gabe Vincent or a Max Strus or these guys that they've been playing since they were the first year that they got. Orlando Robinson was the backup center for. Do you know who Orlando Robinson is?
That's not a real player.
He was the backup center for the Miami Heat in December. And guess what? He sucked, and they figured that out by January or February, but they actually gave him an opportunity, and they played him, and they went out and they signed Zeller, who also was not good, but was at least somewhat playable. Yeah. And, like, these are the things that, like, this is what separates Spo from every other coach in the NBA. Every other coach is like, I'm not playing young guys. I'm not experimenting during the regular season. And then they're all like, oh, wait, what? Dwayne Dedman can't play in the second round? Like, yeah, duh, he sucks. He's washed. Like, this is why I think it drives me so insane when coaches do this. Like, you have to be creative during the regular season so that you're ready to go by the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like to bring it full circle with Nurse and Doc, it's like the biggest issue with Nick Nurse was that like, I mean, when you read the tea leaves and they bring in a quote unquote player development guy and someone who can like handle playing young guys because like the Malachi Flynn stuff not working out and just
Malachi Flynn is just not good. And he got the opportunity. He's played 2,000 minutes in his career. Like at least Nurse tried.
Yeah. And I just always look back at it. I'm like, I feel like Nurse, the man won a title. He's like, he came up through the G League ranks. Like if there was one coach who I would assume would be more comfortable playing a lot of G League guys and being flexible in terms of who he plays.
Yes,
I think Nurse would probably be on that list. But I just wonder when Sixers fans, it's like he comes in, it's like, is he gonna still do the 40 minutes for 7 to 8 guys? And he's not gonna. It's just gonna be a different version of Doc not playing different guys, experimenting, or is it gonna like? I'm very curious what Nick Nurse does here in job number 2 in Philly.
In his defense, go look at the minutes from the 2018 through 2020 teams.
Yeah.
He didn't do this. It was when they had depth that he trusted, and even he played young guys. OG Anunoby was in the rotation. Fred VanVleet was in the rotation. Like, these are not guys that are – and Precious started for them in the playoffs last year at 21 years old. Like, it's not like if he trusts you and he likes what he sees – he will play you. Now, maybe Malachi Flynn wasn't developed correctly under him, and Malachi Flynn will be better, but he did get the opportunity to play. And that was the thing that separates him in my mind, is that, like, at times he needed to play those guys, and he did when the opportunity came. Having said all this, like, go look at those rosters. The minutes were totally normal when they had 7 or 8 guys. I think that he was at odds with what the front office was trying to build, because no one knows this, but Nurse is an offensive coach. He's not a defensive coach. He's become the defensive coach because he was given defensive rosters. And I think that that's where the differentiation was in his mind, was that he had to become this defensive guy that he is not really the core of his identity with the Raptors, because they just kept drafting 6'8" long guys who can't shoot, who can barely dribble. And like, it kind of came to a head this past year when like, they don't have Kyle Lowry to fall back on anymore. Fred VanVleet had a shooting slump, and they didn't have a center on the whole roster until they traded for Jakob Poeltl. Yeah. So, like, all of their flaws were on display this year, and I think that the main thing that I'm most encouraged by with the Nurse hiring, and maybe it is just a different version of Doc, I don't know. I can't say until I've seen it, but, like, the main thing I'm encouraged by is that Nurse is a big analytics guy and Morey's a big analytics guy. So at least they'll see eye to eye on that thing. And then I think that if he's involved with roster moves, which people say Doc was, but I don't really think he was. I think he was only involved in who actually got to play. And like Morey would like, okay, well, if you're not going to play Charles Bassey, I'll just cut him. Like, and we'll bring in Montrezl Harrell because you'll actually play him. So, like, that is the one thing that I hope that Nurse and Morey are on the same page with: who's going to play, what the play style is going to be, how many minutes, and then, like, if there is a guy that's on the team right now, like, I think that, like, the one thing that Nurse really likes defensively as a coach is he loves to put pressure on the ball. He loves to get turnovers, because then he can get open court opportunities that, like, that's something that the Sixers have not really been great at outside of, like, individual players like Matisse Thybulle, and who's now been traded, DeAnthony Melton, those guys. But, like, I think you could see Paul Reed getting a real lift in minutes. Jalen McDaniels could get a real lift in minutes if they're both on the team next year because of this. So, like, the idea is that at least they'll be on the same page with the roster. And that's what I hope, at least.
I like it. We'll end on a positive front here.
All right.
We'll end on positive front. What was the most underrated aspect to Embiid's MVP season this year? That, for folks that did not watch all 82 games plus the postseason, what did they miss about the greatness and the kind of season Embiid had?
Well, it's really funny because now I see, first off, if you listen to my podcast all year, I said Jokic has arguably if not a better argument, just as good of an argument as Embiid, and I think they're both worthy MVPs. And then Jokic didn't try for the last month and a half of the season, and people got mad that Embiid won when he was like busting his ass so that the Sixers could get a better seed. And Denver had the number 1 seed locked up, but the Sixers had a better record. So it was like, it was one of those things where like, I think that people are now rewriting how great of Embiid's season was because Jokic won the title. But like, the argument isn't who's the better player, because I think Jokic has made it very clear, at least at the higher levels, that he is the best, if not the best player, second to Giannis in the NBA right now in terms of being the best player. But this MVP season from Embiid, the best thing for me is something that just disappeared in the playoffs again, which is what drives me insane. But the positive about it is he, in late game situations, his decision making was so much better, his conditioning was better, and his scoring was just on another level. And he was like, other than De'Aaron Fox, he was the second clutchest player in the NBA in terms of game-winning shots. Coming into this year, he had only had 2 in his entire career, and he had like 7 this year. And he was down the stretch of big games, being very quick with decisions, either finding the right pass if they sent the double, always hitting these clutch middies in big game opportunities, hitting like just pristine decision making on the defensive and offensive end of games. And honestly, the one thing I will say is not really his fault. He got injured again. And when he got injured, he's talked about this on the record 100 million times. When he gets injured, he gets out of shape very quickly because he's a huge dude. And if he injures his knee, he can't do cardio in the same way that he can. When it's an upper body thing, he's usually like fine because he can still do cardio and stay in shape or whatever. If it's a lower body injury, he always gets out of shape. And when he came back in the Celtics series, the end of these games, his decision making was not good because he was out of shape and making the wrong mistakes and doing the things that weren't happening throughout most of the regular season in the Nets series. So that's the one thing that I think that you can at least look positively, if that he ever can stay healthy, is that it does feel like that demon that has kind of haunted him in the past has been solved, at least in the regular season, and you just hope that it transfers over into the playoffs.
I like it. TBD, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over on the YouTube page, the Patreon page? What can the good folks do to support everything you got going on each and every day?
Yeah, so subscribe to the YouTube Know Ball with TrillBroDude. Playback, we're doing streams all throughout the off season on there. We're doing one on draft night. We'll do some free agency streams. That's basically, you could just, it's kind of just like YouTube or Twitch, but like we just like pull up things on screen and we talk about like the news that's happening. And then during the season, we do live streams during games and you can watch the games with us. And then, yeah, if you like all that content, subscribe on, Spotify, Apple, and sign up for the Patreon.
There you go. Do it. TBD, thank you as always for the time. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, bud.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.